All right. Hey, everybody. Good evening. It's Tuesday, January 20th, 2015, and this is The Refinery, the place where grassroots organizations come together to explore the best ways to make conservative messaging work, to reach and influence more people. We are live every Tuesday at 8:30 Central on therefineryshow.com. Go there anytime to watch, listen, and subscribe to the show via YouTube, Vigilant Liberty Radio, iTunes, Stitcher, or TuneIn. There are also plenty of options for you to provide us feedback as well. We want to hear from you, particularly in the chat room right now at therefineryshow.com. We already have Prue in there and some more folks. T we've got in there too, because you know what, we need to, given that tonight is the State of the Union. Yes, we are all aware that it's the State of the Union going on, but since we don't want to risk liver damage, we have decided to do the Refinery instead. Tonight I am here with Felicia Cravens from Free Radical Network. I'm also a Free Radical Network, JD Broughton. We have Leslie from the Conservative Union, and Corey and Andy from the Party of Choice. So tonight we are going to talk a little bit of the State of the Union, but before we get into that, since everybody's already had their fill for right now, we want to kick off the show with some discussion of elitism and anti-intellectualism and some big ism words that have been thrown around at conservatives for a while. This was actually brought up to us from Taylor from Vigilant Liberty Radio, iDesert Blog on Twitter. He brought this to our attention over the past week, so we could check that out. From Matt K. Lewis over at his website, he has a podcast which was really interesting to talk about this with a former Bush White House guy, and they had this long discussion about what was valued in the conservative movement, and is it really as anti-intellectual as the left has said? It was a really interesting discussion. Fishy, let's see if you can come in here. Fishy, you listened to this. I did as well. What are some thoughts that you had from it?
Well, I was looking through the thread that we were talking about, what we would talk about for the show tonight, and one of the things that just kept popping up was that theme of elitism. And what the conversation was between Matt and Peter Weiner was whether or not conservatives were more properly labeled anti-elitist or anti-intellectual, and that there was maybe some camps of both, perhaps, within the conservative movement. The anti-elitist strain are the people who look at what, say, Harvard professors have wrought and decided that it wasn't as good as they thought it was. They've seen the chaos that so much of this academia, the intellectualist, the institutional left has done with their planning, and they're hoping to control everything and plan your life for you and order people where they should go, what they should do, what they should eat, how they should work, how many hours, all this sort of thing. That the elitists have got it wrong, and that there's a proper strain in the conservative movement against that. And then they contrasted that with this anti-intellectual strain, they called it. And this was, I guess, most what is the word I'm looking for? I guess captured the most by figures such as Sarah Palin. They used her as an example. Someone who seemed to be very proudly anti-intellectual in their estimation. Well, I didn't know that I necessarily agreed with that. That Sarah Palin might use phrases in a simple manner of delivery that can oversimplify some concepts. I don't think that she's an anti-intellectual as much as an anti-elitist, but they were going with that theme of there being an anti-intellectual strain. And I think it was evidenced in part, they thought, by some of the people in the Tea Party. Now, that's not to say that the Tea Party hasn't been thoughtless on occasion with how they do their messaging and how they might approach an issue, or how there might have been arguments over tactics and strategy to get to the goals that everyone shares on the right, or everyone, we think, pretty much shares. But that there is that charge that they leveled. I don't know if I necessarily agree that there's a whole lot of anti-intellectualism, but I do know that there's a need for us to message in a way that asks people to think through an issue. And when I was looking into that, it reminded me of something that Thomas Sowell had said, and I think this fits very well with things that we talk about on this program. I just wanted to breeze through it really quickly. I'm going to put the link in the chat. But he talks about being an undergrad at Harvard, and he's putting forth a theory on how something would work economically. And his professor asked, and then what will happen? And so Sowell went back and thought about the problem a little bit more, and he came back with the next step. And then his professor asked, and then what will happen? And he kept returning the same question throughout the whole exercise of this one theory that Sowell was expounding. And it was that moment, I guess, he felt when he realized what was going on. He had not got in the habit of thinking through the next step and the next step and the next step. And that as we tell stories about what we want conservatism to achieve and try to, I guess, recruit people to that cause, that we need to do that in our economic work, talking about economics, as well as about policy, to be able to walk people through the next step and the next step and ask them, well, what happens if this happens? What happens if that policy is passed? Because people spend a heck of a lot more time and investment making their own economic decisions than they do their political decisions. So he offered that as a way to talk to people about a huge range of issues, but making sure that we had thought through a problem, got people in the habit of thinking through a problem more. And so I thought that might be a way to counter some of the charges, whether from our side or from another side, of anti-intellectualism. Again, I don't think that's necessarily true, but I think it is a conversation we need to have.
Yeah, and it's disgusting that those sort of claims get leveled at us and are hardly ever leveled against the left, who also has their fair share of, and when I say their fair share, I mean more than that, of anti-intellectual. I mean, most of the majority, the vast majority of their arguments are emotionally based. So when we talk about anti-intellectualism, I mean, there you go. It's pretty stark, the contrast when you get into the actual issues and how deep we go into ours, how we actually have documentation, how we can back up what we're saying versus what the left does, which is basically saying, well, it makes us feel good. Andy and Corey, I saw that you were unmuted there.
Well, you know, I'm not just against all scientific knowledge. I'm against all knowledge. I just think all of it pollutes your mind, and that's, you know, and it hurts my head, you know, especially when there's a lot of it in there, and that really hurts too. Now, the thing that the reason that this for me is such a joke is, as you know, I'm a former leftist, raised in, you know, leftist academia and all this.
You are an intellectual. You come from intellectuals.
Well, I come from intellectual stock, but I like to think that I broke through the gate and ran out to pasture, and now I'm not. But the thing that really, here's the biggest reason I left the left, though, is because of their lack of thinking. You know, I don't talk much about my family. I will in this moment. My family is highly intellectual. But when you're nothing, as I always say, nothing closes a mind faster than a heart. When your heart is committed to something, you will shut your mind down on it. And you will reduce your mind to being nothing more than an internal lawyer defending the choices and views that your heart has guided you to. All right? What I really began to notice when I left liberalism is that my family, when I would have discussions with them and I would start to win scientifically, like on abortion, and I mean, I would really start to do very well. Or when we would discuss, evolution and creation, and when I would start to show them, wait a minute, I know a lot more than you on these things, okay? A lot more. And then get into some economics, same thing. And these are people with high IQs. They would start to do the same thing each time. They would shut it down and not want to talk. Now I come into conservatism, and there are people who disagree with me on things. I can talk to atheist, evolutionist conservatives, and guess what? They don't shut me down. Well, none are as bad as you, JD. But no, what I mean is I know a number of them, and we can talk freely. Why? Because they don't want to control me. They don't have anything invested in controlling my views and beliefs as long as I don't control them with mine, which I don't. And so they find it an enjoyable interplay of ideas, and we can learn from each other. With the left, what I found is just the existence of my different views is a threat and an insult, and it must be stopped, and therefore they shut it down. So I guess what I'm getting to is that I found leaving the left to go to the right an immense release of intellectual energy to where I was allowed to think and allowed to expand my mind and allowed to look at issues from all kinds of different angles. And it's been freeing. I've never thought so much in my life. I love it. And to tell me that the left is more pro-science, my goodness, look at global warming, it's an insult. It's not just an insult to me, it's an insult to reality.
Right. Well, how do we counter the conventional wisdom though? Because and I'm with you, Andy. I've experienced the same thing. Just in fact, recently this week there was, some silly little meme that turned into 100 comments about pro-abortion and anti-abortion, and I just sat back and watched it, and the anti-abortion arguments were fact-based and science-based and trying to persuade rather than mandate or dictate, trying to win hearts and that kind of thing. And the pro-choicers, they kept complaining that the right was all about shoving their religion in their faces, and they're the only ones in the whole comment thread that were really even mentioning religion. So, I mean, they toss out this stuff because they are so firmly convinced that the right is all about anti-science and hates facts and is all about forcing their religion down anyone, and they will proclaim that to be the case even when it's very clearly not. And the conventional wisdom out there, even among people who are not political at all, is that the right it's the religious right, and we all want to put God in everybody's face, and we're all going to be all Jesus up in your house, and that we don't believe in science at all, and that's why we're against global warming, is because the planet's only 6,000 years old and whatever, because we prefer oil derricks or something. I don't even know what they think our logic is. They think we don't have any. How do we counter the conventional wisdom that is so strong?
Well, before you get into that, I want to make a distinction here. I think we have two challenges. One is the personal, the interpersonal, and one is the PR campaign. So I want to look at them through both lenses, because what we do on an interpersonal level is our own mission work, as it were. But what we do as a movement, as a party, as the conservative end of the spectrum, is a broader message that has to be more succinct.
And you're right, because I see in the one-on-one conversations that our guys are actually doing pretty well as far as making their arguments with logic and with reason and with compassion and generosity and courtesy, and they're proving the case, because you look at a string of comments and the only people who are cussing and angry and yelling and naming names are the liberals. And so on the interpersonal basis, our guys are doing a bang up job, but we don't have the support from our national and local political structure. We don't have the PR and marketing support to back us up.
You know, sometimes, and I hate to say this, but JD, you saw this with me recently talking to somebody in Facebook. Sometimes you have to resort to mockery. And the reason is it wakes people up to where you say, look, if you're going to make points that don't even address my points, I'm going to mock you to wake you up to the fact that you're not making any points. You're just spouting liberalism. Well, I can spout conservatism, okay, which would be equally worthless. If you're not going to interact point by point, if you're not going to bring it, then get off. Okay, you don't have what it takes. You're obviously out of your league. Okay, I'm not even breaking a sweat outrunning you, and you really, really, really need to leave now and come back when you have an argument. Now, that sounds really demeaning, and it is. But what it does, and I've found this, is that it shocks people into the reality of, you know, this conservative has no respect for my level of thought, not just my line of reasoning, but my level of thought. Rush Limbaugh, shocked. You know, we can say, well, gee, he said some things that, yeah, I agree. He said some things that embarrass us or whatever. But when he first came on the scene, what he did is he mocked the left, and that was at a time that the left was never mocked. And it shocked them. And then he started really shocking them by beating a lot of them in debate. Okay? Now, he's been replaced by a lot of people who do that end of it better. All right? But it really set the tone. I have found that we need to stop accepting that the left, and trust me, as a former member of the left, I'm just going to tell you, their reasoning is ludicrous. It's idiotic. It's insane. It's weak. You know, even on something like evolution, you know, or you know, these kinds of things. If I talk to JD, he's going to talk about things like radioactive decay rates and you know, distance light travels from distant stars and how many years it would take and whatever. A leftist is going to talk to me and say, "You're an idiot, young earther." Okay, I would rip them to pieces scientifically. If I want a challenge, I almost have to talk to somebody on the right.
It's the difference between having an honest discussion and you know, having just talking points yelled at you. And you know, going back to that abortion debate, who has the facts on their side more? The person who says, "Oh, well, it doesn't look like a baby, so it's not a baby. How could it be a baby if it's two cell?" You know, going into that, you can there's a strong case for some serious anti-intellectualism there, because the science says what the science says, and these guys just making the case that it's certainly, oh, you think that's a baby? You think that's a human life? Technically, yeah, it is. Science says that. So who's the anti-intellectual here? You or me? I mean, I have facts that I'm presenting, or you who's basically saying, oh, well, it doesn't look like a duck, so it can't quack.
You know, if I can jump in on that one, JD, I like to challenge people on this one very simply and say this. Look. Before we even look at the facts, I want to know why. Just tell me honestly, right from the heart. Don't cover it. Why do you believe the unborn are not human lives yet? Is it A, because of your reasoned conclusion, having investigated scientific facts, or B, because that would be more convenient to your situation? Just tell me honestly. I put them on the spot because the answer is B. It's B.
Sure, I don't know that you can get somebody to admit that, but it's definitely, you know, you can tell that is the bulk of where those arguments come from, is that I like this particular outcome, or I like this particular talking point, therefore I'm married to it because of the way I think it fits my narrative and my worldview. That, and to go back to what you said, Andy, about Rush Limbaugh. Rush revolutionized the right in the way the right sees the left, because he was pointing out a whole bunch of actions, activities, statements, beliefs that were ridiculous, that did need mocking, and he began that whole process that other people have picked up and refined and made better. And for that, he will always be the one who really kicked off that idea of educating people on the right about what left tactics are and what they do when they're in their natural habitat, I guess you'd say. And those are great things. I would never want to criticize him for those things that he's done. The only criticisms I have of Rush is that sometimes I think he's unwise. But that's it, because he is the one who started the idea, educating millions of people across the country on what leftists actually did and what they were. And I mean, that's sort of what we're trying to do too, and when we do our left tactics segments, just help people isolate it, view a tactic in the I guess its natural habitat, and show what that looks like and how we can attempt to take that on.
Well, let me ask the group real quick here, because before I became a conservative, I became a Christian, and the one thing I noticed very quickly is that a lot of Christians were very intimidated intellectually by my old side. Okay? And I would just be like, look, don't get me wrong, there are some smart atheists, but they are the minority. Okay? I mean, there are a lot of people who are just blowhards at the end of the bar. Have you
intimidated? You mean that the Christians that you were meeting assumed that the left was intellectually superior?
Yes, they assumed, they were terrified. They were afraid, because they would get into a discussion, and most of the people, and I'll shorten this, but most of the people, all of us were raised in the public education system back then, which was heavily left-wing and atheist. Okay. And so everybody talked in those terms. So if you were a Christian and you went to talk to, the unbelievers or whatever, you were at a quick disadvantage. And because of that, they were very intimidated right away. You had to have so many more steps to be able to explain through, just to get back to step one. I won't take the time to explain all that. But have you guys kind of noticed amongst conservatism, be it Tea Party or establishment, wherever, that a lot of them, even the ones who will get abrasive and name call of the left, do so because they're intimidated, because like those Christians that I dealt with, they give way too much intellectual respect to their opponents. They think they're a lot smarter than they really are. Do you see any of that?
Well, I want to bring a verse to mind, actually, to talk about that. What do we find that, I think it was Paul who was saying, be prepared to have an answer for your faith, the reason for your faith, right?
1 Peter 3:15.
Peter, thank you. Okay, so there you go. You've got that habit established early in the writings of the church about being able to defend the things that you believe, whether they are about faith or whether they are about the way the world works or about politics or whatever. That's a habit that we want to establish. The places that used to be the heart of intellectual, I guess, navigation and learning and things were schools run by religious orders. I mean, this is the tradition way, way back from when these universities first began to be established. They were almost all of them religious, not secular institutions. Now, you still have a bunch of religious institutions that have turned into secular institutions, but it has never been a hallmark of Christianity to offer platitudes instead of reason. All the way back to Paul on, what was that, in front of the Romans? Was that Mars Hill? The sermon there, or the speech there? All the way back, it's about reason. It's about giving answers. It's about let us reason together. And I think that's what's happened is that we have lost that tradition, maybe, or we have lost that habit of exercising our minds in those ways to defend our faith. We just want to live it and be done with it. We're not seeing ourselves as defenders of conservatism or defenders of the faith or things like that. Those of us, who are Christians, some here are not, but to be able to reason and talk to people about why one believes something or why one thinks a certain way, that's a tradition that goes back biblically. And maybe it's just, again, that we've lost the habit.
Another thing that I think is really, I mean, and Andy talked about it as well, is the fact that when you are in an environment that's inherently secular, it's hard because you're generally outnumbered. And another thing that is convenient is that the leftist atheists, aside from their tendency to run in packs, is the fact that they're constantly on the attack. It's all about the attack. It's there's no need to defend. There's no need to defend their point of view. It's all about attacking you because you're the idiot. You're the fool who believes in, whatever. In the great spaghetti monster. That's the thing. There's this overwhelming push from the leftist atheists that do this sort of stuff. And I can totally understand not wanting to be a part of that situation, to just sort of shut up and get out of there, because that's not fun. It's not fun when you have people who don't respond at all to anything that shakes their worldview. That's not what they're supposed to do, because in a way that's kind of paradoxical but not really, atheism is a religion in and of itself, particularly on the left, and they are indoctrinated, if not more than the vast majority of Christians out there. They have this faith pounded into them, and they are ready, willing, and able to go on the attack for that faith. So.
Well, I think evangelizing the faith, whatever your faith happens to be, is a very common practice. The environmentalists evangelize their faith, and they try to convert people to the Church of Environmentalism, and all of the different religions that we have out there. And whether you call it a religion, or you call it atheism, or you call it environmentalism, or global warmingism, or whatever you want to call it.
Anti-GMOs. GMOs are the devil.
Oh, yeah. Or the vaccine people. There's a very real human tendency to have a belief system and to evangelize that, so that members of people that you want to be a part of your tribe believe as you do. I mean, that's a very ancient historical need that we have, because it happens in all societies throughout history, that groups have a belief system, and the tribes are identified by their common belief system. What we're seeing now is that because so many people are separated from the religious belief system, and they only experience it on Sunday, they aren't allowed to experience it at work or at church, and they aren't experiencing it with their friends and their family. Their entertainment doesn't support or even mention their religious faith tradition. So they find a different belief system to participate in 6 days of the week, and that 2 hours on Sunday, if they even go to church, isn't strong enough and isn't enough of an influence in their lives to give them the strength and the persuasive power that they need. They aren't studying the ancient philosophers who were also popes and priests. They don't read Thomas Aquinas, and neither have I. I only know that he is one of those religious intellectuals that really smart people have studied and can quote him. And that's one of those. It's on my to-do list. I'll get to it. But in the meantime, Sci-Fi has some really good shows on. Yeah, I'm a geek. But it's
in a lot of those shows,
the environmental religious people. They're very strong in their evangelism, and they're evangelizing, and they are comfortable doing that 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And so they're good at it, and they evangelize all the time and everywhere because they're never told that this is an inappropriate place to talk about the environment. But we are frequently told this is an inappropriate place to talk about God.
And that's the thing. It goes back to what you're saying about the shows that don't really touch on faith. They actively make fun of people of faith. That's another thing, is that they actively make fun of them, and they actively promote the religion of global warming, etc. So that's another thing culturally that we have to try and fix. But sorry, Corey and Annie were going to get to something.
Oh, no, you're fine. I was just going to say it's easy to evangelize when Hollywood and entertainment and the media are all behind you.
Yeah.
But when
absolutely. They're not taking any risk whatsoever.
No, there's no risk at all. And so when you are talking about whether it's conservatism or your faith or something like that, you're going against the flow, which takes a lot of courage in the first place. And then you're worried about, well, what if I don't have an answer for some question that somebody has? And so it's very easy to go back into your shell and just be scared to say what you think.
Because you know what? I haven't read Thomas Aquinas. I'm not going to really have a really intellectual discussion about, and I don't know any of those verses that you guys have talked about earlier. I don't know any of that stuff. So I can't really say anything other than I like Jesus. Jesus is just all right with me. Whoa, yeah.
But the greater point that I was trying to get to there was...
Every question is Jesus.
Oh, right.
Every question is Jesus. I just want you to know that. Okay.
Oh, let me share a message from a company that we do business with. There's a security protocol and all of the people that have come out to demonstrate it to us, when they get into the logon and you have to create your security questions, and there's like 5 of them, every single one of the salespeople has sat in their office and said, well, we always just say Jesus because Jesus is always the answer to the question. They absolutely are perfectly comfortable saying that in the offices of people they've just met, and I think that's a beautiful thing.
That's not very secure, though, for a password.
The greater point I wanted to get into with that bit about colleges and whatever wasn't even so much a religious thing as that we should have an answer for our conservatism too, and it is a habit that we can relate to through religion, even though people are saying that's why we're anti-science, because some of us are in the conservative movement are religious. It's that we should be able to not necessarily study every issue and have every talking point available. That way leads to madness, I will tell you. But have an answer for conservatism that, and this points, again, I'm doing this every week, back to Corey and Andy and the Party of Choice, because they have given us a platform, a way to do that, a structure, so that one does not have to use all the gazillion talking points on any issue. You can take one and drill down to the control element, and there you go. Off you are to the races.
When you break it down to choice and control, it's so easy to tackle any issue, because there are the ways that the government, the left, is trying to control you are obvious. I mean, that's just how it is.
Well, a lot of it, because we were talking about education, and I would always say, look, if you're so confident in your points of view, why do you have to turn the school system into one big God-free zone where the other side is completely walled out? Why can't you have vouchers where people choose where they go, and families can choose to have, I don't care what your family, why do you have to control how other people's kids are taught? Do you really have that little confidence in your viewpoints? Because that is the big weakness, and if you want to mock them, and I do, I enjoy mocking them, I do, okay? And the reason is because it's a wake-up call. It's not because I'm mean. And when they control, that is always a mocking point. Because every time the left controls on an issue, what they're really displaying is their lack of confidence in their position. And in fact, that's true in relationships. And I'll tell people, hey guys, and I'll be talking to young people, hey, forget left and right, forget politics for a second. Just think about relationships. When somebody tries to control you in this or that area of your relationship, aren't they just showing they have no confidence in themselves in that area? That they have to control the other person? Of course. Well, the same is true politically. If you have to control the schools where they're taught, if you have to control the work setting and what they can say, if you have to control through political correctness the verbiage they can use, if you have to control how many bullets they carry to protect themselves, if you have to control them, that means that you have very little confidence in your point of view. And personally, I think you're being too hard on yourself. You probably have more good things to say than you think.
And one other thing, too, if you're not sure what to say, because maybe it's a topic you're not very well studied up on, it's never a bad idea to ask the liberal what they think and why. And just get them talking and keep asking them questions. And you don't even have to share what you think. Just be like, okay, hey, thanks for sharing that. And then you can think about it later and think about, okay, well, what would I say in the next conversation?
And one last thing, and always the reason we give our main statements is so you can provide a guide. Our main statements are, number one, I want to control my own life, not yours. Can you say the same? Okay, I want to control my own life, not yours. Can you say the same? And number two, when they say, well, we think you control some things. No. Nobody supports every choice. But we decide it this way. We support every choice that doesn't take away someone else's choice. Can you say the same? Then you look at them and say, no, this is an issue where you have much more expertise than I do. I don't know much about this. But can we apply those measurements to this issue? And talk to me and share with me all of your expertise on this. But I want to hear where you do not control other people's lives, where you do not have one person's choice take away another person's choice. I want to hear where you give liberty rather than taking it away. And you don't have to be, and here's the final part, you don't have to be an expert at all on the issue. At that point, you've put it in their park, and they will find themselves having if they're liberal, they're going to have an impossible time conveying their views without revealing their control.
It is so beautiful. I love hearing that every week. And we need to reiterate it every week.
Yeah, it's true. And I've used the choice and control framework a lot. It's almost subconscious at this point that in any kind of discussion, whether it's to my own kind of people to try to explain a concept to them or guide them on how to argue a point, or if it's in the middle of a discussion with somebody on the other side, I will use that framework of choice versus control. And whether I use those words or not, that's in the back of my mind as I'm framing my response or my statement to make sure that what I'm guiding people to say or what I'm saying myself is in those kinds of terms. So it puts the other side on that footing of they have to defend why they want to control things. And it also loops us back to what Fishy was talking about earlier of continuing to ask, and then what? And that's an ancient technique of conversations and persuasion and debate is just asking questions. And by just asking questions, you can defeat the other guy. Because if you ask him the right questions in the right, and just simple questions of, and then what? Well, and then what? You can guide them in the direction you want to take them to and make them prove themselves wrong, which is far more powerful than if you had just told them that they were wrong, because they will believe what they tell themselves.
Really, at your boy Socrates.
Really quick here, JD, and then I'll let you jump in. That's what Corey's father kept using when he asked what my intentions were with his daughter. And then what? And then what? And then
I love it. Neither of us actually had a salient point there. We both wanted to get our jokes in.
Well, we're going to go into the State of the Union here in a second, but before we do that, I was listening to Tony Katz this morning on my way in carpool, and I was listening. He made a statement that was so powerful to me I had to pull over and tweet it, and it was, people who get hurt in politics, with the policies that are out there, People who get hurt regardless of their politics. And I thought that was really powerful. If we're talking about why a policy is harmful, why it's a bad idea, he was saying in his show this morning that you don't have to drag the politics into it to have the discussion. You show where the damage is, and you can even take politics off the table and just look at a situation through the questions, and then what, and then what, and then what, or finding the examples where someone is hurt, been hurt by a policy. We've talked about that when we've talked about bullying, we've talked about big government and how to steer the conversation to people around the way government controls and tries to gain control. The main thing is focusing on when people get hurt, they get hurt regardless of their politics. So you have an opening with people who may not be anywhere near you politically, and that's why I always want us to go back and remember who the audience is, because we may be able to convert people on an issue or on a group of issues that are not going to vote our way all the time, but we might be able to make use of them and partner with them for a period or on an issue, and that would give them more opportunities to interact with us and hear more about what we believe. So that quote resonated with me, and I didn't want to lose it.
Well, I think it's excellent. Let me, because I know we want to move on to the next topic, I just want to close with this. The whole conservatives or Christians are unintellectual thing. When people shout me down, shout those kinds of accusations at me, or you're just a young earther, you're a Jesus freak, or it's a conservative thing, you're an idiot Tea Party or whatever. My response is very simple. No, I look at the Tea Party or conservatives or Christians, whatever group they mention, I look at them the same way I look at you. I ask, do they have the courage? Do they have the confidence in their beliefs to hear the other side? Or don't they? Or do they feel they must shout down the other side to control the discussion and silence dissent? So what are you going to do? And at that point, they're really, they have red faces a lot. And then I say, look, do you want to hear, or do you want to shut down and silence dissent? If you want to shut down and silence dissent by doing what you're doing, then I would say it is not us who are afraid of intellect. It is you.
That was pretty well said. Nice job. And the answer is clearly yes, they are anti-intellectual. But yeah, shifting topics a little bit here, because it is annoyingly the 7th State of the Union address going on. I don't know if it's still going on, if it's over yet, whatever. It started at 9. Who knows when it'll end? He enjoys speaking, especially when he's speaking to a crowd of people that are clapping mindlessly at him and everything that he says. So
the absolute only thing I care about the State of the Union is I want to see a picture of what Sheila Jackson Lee is wearing. It's the only thing.
Absolutely magnificent. Between her,
blue.
She's wearing blue today?
Blue? Yes, not red. Blue. I didn't see this. I saw this on come across my feed. Blue with the bagel thing on the head.
Awesome. And she's been there for hours. You know it. Cringe.
Absolutely. Brittany Pounders actually did report that on Facebook.
What would we do without Sheila?
We need to have a congressional who wore it best. It would be awesome. That would be great. We need to get we need Twitchy to go and do that. I'm sure they have reporters with time on their hands to go and do that. Do the fashion show for the State of the Union address. Fishy, I know that you got a chance to take a look at the transcript. I saw some of it myself, talking about, give me a bill to mandate that all companies give 7 days maternity and illness leave, and I'll sign it right away because we're the last free nation in the world that doesn't give doesn't say that we need to have these things. The more ways that the government is controlling you, and you get to pick when you go and search for a job, whether you want these things and if that's a deal breaker or not. And there's absolutely no consequences. Absolutely, if you ask that question of and then what? And then what if you get the mandated pregnancy and illness leave? You don't really get the answer to what happens then and who gets to have their job removed because of these things. So.
Right. Well, I will admit I did not listen to the State of the Union. I haven't listened to one in years. I've read transcripts. However, I did not get to read this transcript because the link that I was given didn't work. So I'm going to do the smart thing. And because I have been referencing Tony Katz, I'm going to go back to Tony and just read through some of his tweets, because that is the appropriate way to experience the State of the Union address, is through tweets. Because what some clever people do is they go back and they look at their notes from previous State of the Union addresses and they compare. And this is like, what, the sixth now? Is this number 6? Where we're...
I was going to say, it's like a fruitcake. It's like the traditional fruitcake.
Yes.
Every year we have the same fruitcake, except every year it's got different decorations on it. So that's all it is. It's the same fruitcake.
Yes. Yes. So here he says, Tony's tweeting in response, "No threat is greater than climate change." Great, said ISIS. So apparently that line went out there. They're talking about apparently some poverty programs. Tony responds, "Haven't we proven that capitalism is the best way to eradicate poverty?" Well, if you ask Bono, he'll even tell you that. So and I know that President's rather fond of Bono. Let's see. Here's Obama not talking about radical Islam. "The bankrupt ideology of violent extremism" is a phrase he used, but he wouldn't say terrorism. Oh, no, wait.
So our enemy is not ISIS, it's BIVE, bankrupt ideology of violent extremism, so we're fighting against BIVE?
BIVE, yeah, well, Daesh, BIVE,
BIVE.
So many things. Apparently he did say the word terrorism. I'm wrong. Tony applauds it. Here's another quote from Tony. "This is where Obama explains how he understands the world stage better than the rest of us." So, yeah, there was a lot of that. It's great. Let's see, what else do we got in here? Apparently there's a veteran, hiring a veteran program. That's a good thing. Lauding Vice President Biden's great work. And then, drink! That's awesome. And then he says, "Chicago, where college is free if you live long enough to go." So apparently, college in Chicago came up. I don't know. 7 days of paid sick leave. So that's another thing. Tony asks, why 7? Why not 10, 20, 5,000? Going through the whole thing. It looks like he hit on the same thing that he always does, the same promises we knew to expect. It seems like to me that this has become sort of a sweepstakes. The speech is a sweepstakes. It's, whoever he can amass enough people together to put their votes in, and then they'll get a bonus out of it at the end if they win.
For all of those who call on division in the right, who say, "I'm going to pull out, I'm not going to vote Republican, I'm going to go third party, or I'm too mad at Boehner," and by the way, I'm a Tea Partier, I share a lot of their feelings, but not their strategy. Those who feel that they want to pull back and divide, here's my message. I hope you watch the State of the Union address, because all of those who united are the ones who are preventing all of that from happening. Everything he listed tonight, if enough people had followed you and split off in November, all of that would be happening, and worse. But thankfully, enough people did not agree with you and did unite, and now all of it isn't happening. There is no in between. You either have the votes on Capitol Hill or you don't. And because of the numbers and unity of the Democratic Party, the numbers to stop everything that was in the State of the Union address only come through unity. What do you guys think?
Unity, dirty unity. Yep.
If you don't stand with me, you're on the other side.
And you have to explain to people who do not see that where that comes from, please.
Oh. Well, the last speech that Breitbart gave, pretty much at CPAC 2012, which I was at, but I missed. I was off by a day, so I couldn't get to see it live. He said that he didn't care about who won the primary, the presidential primary. It wasn't clear who was going to be our candidate yet, and he said, he just didn't care. It's been a long time since he cared who the candidate was going to be eventually, because no matter who that candidate was, we were going to push that candidate and make sure that they won, and make sure that divisions, whatever issues we have, we know at the very least that our guy is going to be closer to what we believe in than Barack Obama was. And he absolutely was right, and I think there was unity that year. I think that we did our very best to turn out the base, and it seems like we did certainly better than McCain did in 2008. But that's the thing. If you haven't had a chance to look at that clip, it'll be in the links at the in the description at the end of the show, and maybe floating around here somewhere, because it's just an excellent thing to watch. But that was the unity speech to end all unity speeches, and it was a great one.
Yeah, and once again, guys, you know where I'm coming from. I'm the evangelical Christian right Tea Partier, okay? I'm not happy with how a lot of the party is run. It's not the way I would be. But I wouldn't get elected in New Jersey, would I, JD? They'd throw me, they'd probably shoot me.
No, nobody carries guns, so no, you wouldn't get shot. You would just, probably be. We do specialize in cement, so I hope that you know how to breathe underwater.
I do not, and so, here's the thing. I was thinking about it this week. The Republican Party is ideal. I was talking to some Tea Partiers, and I said, hey guys, think of it this way. Think for a moment, take a step back and look at this country as it is. This country has spent several decades being fully indoctrinated by the big three: academia, entertainment, and the media. All right? You've got a country that has no notion overall of its foundings. That's why you can always do those funny man-on-the-street interviews and questions. People have no idea of their foundations in this country, overall, the majority. So you've got a country that's that far away. And here we come in as the Tea Party, and we're restoring constitutional conservatism, which is wonderful. Obviously, if we did not have a Republican Party that could reach much further than us and could form beachheads and strongholds in states where we could never reach, like Maine and so forth, if we didn't have Chris Christie winning in New Jersey and so forth, we would be nothing but a rejected, laughed at, outside virus. That's what we Tea Partiers would be in this country that my old side, the left, has so indoctrinated against everything the Founding Fathers believed in. So I look at the Republican Party as this. How ideal could it possibly be? Instead of being just like me, it's much more diverse. I disagree with various aspects of it, but it reaches much further than I can reach, and it establishes strongholds in all these states where somebody named JD in a state like New Jersey can actually listen to me, and I can listen to him, and we can learn from each other on Tuesday nights and influence one another and move the needle of public opinion. None of that happens if it's just the Tea Party and just people like me and Ted Cruz. None of it happens. It only happens with the Republican Party as it is currently constructed. I think it's ideal.
And of course, you mean that because I'm more conservative than you, right? That's
You're frightening.
okay. As long as we're on cool on that, I just want to make sure.
You still burn witches there? Do you burn witches? I mean, you're close to that area.
No, that's up north a bit. It's
I
a drive. We don't like them very much either, so it's like not worth it.
But
speaking of,
you don't like them because of sports teams, though, right? Not because of being like Massachusetts and stuff.
Right. It's a sports thing. Yeah, absolutely, and we won't talk about that. My condolences to the Pate family.
Thank you.
Were robbed.
I wasn't going to go there, but I'm glad you did.
Okay.
No. I'm okay. Actually, we went out and had the funnest presentation a couple hours after that. So we were over it in no time and had a ball. It's okay, guys. We'll be back. It's all good.
Awesome. And it's good to know that you got your presentation. That the presentation went well. Speaking of presentation, we have some pretty poor presentation on our side in response to something that is going on YouTube, and I really, this is something that I've talked about for a long time now. I've written about it, and I've done other shows about it, and that is how the conservative movement doesn't use YouTube very well. I mean, we're obviously a show that is on YouTube right this very second, but we are an internal memo. We are not doing something to broaden our base via cultural stuff. We're strictly a conservatives talking to conservatives thing. Certainly we have some liberal viewers, but it's political wonk stuff. It's not fun, happy, culture-y stuff that we discuss Tuesday nights.
We hope people are entertained, but that's not our main goal.
Right. But there are lots of people who I know it's shocking, who use YouTube as a way to entertain people, who make their livings, in fact, by going out there and making videos that millions and millions and millions of people watch. And 3 of those people are actually going to get a chance. 3 of those YouTubers, and no, they have that's not a type of potato. You don't put it in stews. 3 of these YouTubers are going to actually interview the President of the United States. They are going to interview, and this is not the first time that this has happened. And actually, earlier last year, I should say, the President sat down with a bunch of YouTubers. This year, it's going to be a smaller thing. It's going to be 3 YouTubers. It's going to be Bethany Moda, who I believe is a fashion YouTuber, does a lot of fashion videos, how to get certain looks, whatever. Hank Green of the Vlog Brothers, who is one of the real seminal video vloggers on YouTube, and he's got a ton of different things across multiple channels. He does a science show. He does just a vlog with his brother, which is a widely watched thing. It's huge, and these guys have millions of views. And Glozell is a comedian who does funny skits on YouTube. And this was brought to my attention by Julie Borowski. She posted this on Facebook, this article from TheParty.org or BizPack Review. It says, I think it might be a repost from BizPack Review, but the fact that it got posted on TheParty.org is really, it's not something I'm happy about. I'm going to post the link in the chat. And basically, the point of the article, which is called "Keeping It Classy," Obama interviewed by 3 YouTube by 3 what is it? It's amateur. That's what it is. Amateur YouTube personalities, and the picture is of Glozell in green lipstick, which is her trademark, and she's a comedian. This is her thing, and it's just like, really, guys, you're going to be this dismissive of something that is I mean, it's a widely respected art form at this point. It's something that many millions of people, more people watch YouTube than watch, you know, tons of TV. It's ridiculous, the numbers, billions and billions of views each month, and we are looking down at this concept when we should be really we need to pay super close attention to this, because Obama is giving these guys access. He's giving them a way to participate in the political process. And what are we doing? We're writing snide articles about how unprofessional it is for Obama to be, you know, taking, you know, whatever, degrading the office of the presidency because he's talking to average Americans. And that's what we need to get down to, is that these people are famous because of how democratized the media has become. These guys would not have had a chance if they didn't have this awesome tool of YouTube to put out their content that they made themselves individually, and, you know, have it be good and have their good content be shared. And we want to, you know, say, oh, in a move that his critics will say further proves he's mailing it in at this point, President Obama has agreed to do interviews with 3 YouTube personalities. The stuff and I won't even tell you about the comments because they're just awful. But we need to pay serious attention to this, and we need to realize that we can't just ignore the culture. We can't ignore this, and we can't look down on it. We need to be out there and giving access, just like the president is.
Can we talk a little bit about our anti-elitism in this regard? That perhaps that there is an elitist attitude in some of the conservative movement that would put forth the position there that these are not avenues that are worthy for political discussion, or that the president is, you know, being, how do you say it, less, you know, saying that it just marginalizing the whole concept because the president is being less serious. The number of people who watched, say, Michelle Obama on Jimmy Fallon, and we talked about that not too long ago, in the clip where she goes on his little skit show, the number of people that saw that are probably a lot fewer than the number of people who are going to see through these 3 YouTube channels the interview with the president. The people who are gaining access through this have such large audiences, and they're not overlapping in a lot of cases, that they're going to be able to read. This is a brilliant move by the administration in terms of exploiting the culture. And if we can sneer at it, we can say, oh, that's not serious. And meanwhile, the president is getting his message out to a bunch of people. So the way that I look at it is, of course, we have to do better. We have to do better in getting our message out, and this is one of the avenues in which we need to improve. Obviously, we have to do better culturally. This is a cultural opportunity. But what I think we see is that people on the right, they think politics is one thing, and entertainment is another, and never the twain shall meet. And it's bothersome to me in a way, because we don't support people like Remy, Go Remy with Reason and the videos he makes. We don't see a lot of support for Julie Borowski and the videos that she does, which are so cute. The one she did on the Sriracha, they put it on their website, where she was protesting what California was trying to do to drive these people out of California. She did a hilarious video like that, and it's relatable and it's good, but we don't get to spend enough of our effort boosting those people so they can become more influential. and have these opportunities. As we run up to 2016, I definitely am going to be looking and seeing which candidates are engaging in new areas like this.
Well, quick question here. And Borowski and Remy are brilliant. They are brilliant, especially she is, because she is so consistently brilliant. And so is he. We have a problem, though, don't we? Because I totally agree with what I'm hearing here. Anything that gets out information to people is an avenue for communication. I don't see one as better than another. In fact, like you said, if it's an avenue that reaches, without a lot of crossover, that's reaching new veins, that's even more valuable, right? And because they don't just hear it all the time. Here's my concern, because I'd love to have Republican or Tea Party, whatever, leaders interacting in these venues. But while we have a far deeper bench, we have far more impressive line of candidates coming up and so forth, we don't have candidates who I think would interact in an entertaining fashion, an enjoyable fashion in these venues. In other words, I think they'd fall flat on their face and it wouldn't work. Do we need candidates who can do that better? And I don't think that's just younger. I know young ones who are stiff as can be and old ones who are a lot more fun. Do you see what I'm saying here?
I do, but I think that now's the time to practice that, don't you?
Yeah. Maybe if they could practice that in venues like this that are safer. I don't know.
Ripping the Band-Aid off faster, I think, is preferable in this case. And just the mere fact that, oh my goodness, a Republican is actually asking to come on my show, to come on my channel and talk with me? Really? A Republican? I think that, by and large, while the slant is to the left on YouTube, I think that a lot of these people aren't, have not made up their minds. I think that there are plenty of these people who haven't thought so much about politics, but guess where they're going to be thinking after they get asked to interview the president? Guess where they think the progressive and hip and awesome and great, and they want to hear my opinion. They want to know what I am thinking about, what is important to me and my constituents, and that's how this is being billed. Is that the people, their subscribers, they want questions to come from their subscribers so that they can ask the president from their subscriber base, these questions. So on a multi-layer thing, it's important for us to not only have some conservative YouTubers out there and participate in YouTube in that way, but also to participate by watching YouTube and having, be a part of those subscriber bases so that you can see these things. I don't know how many other people knew about this, and how many people even know or care what YouTube is, besides a thing where they get to watch cats do silly things. Well, sorry, go ahead.
Quick question for you, because you guys are more or less experts in YouTube. You really are. I'm not. All right? And you are. Wouldn't it be a valuable thing for you to create a presentation for GOP lawmakers that several examples of YouTube of things that are highly watched, or things that examples of of maybe Obama going on and here's what was effective and here isn't, and be able to show them, this is, not only do you need to go on YouTube, but let me give you a quick, and this is only 30 minutes long, I'm going to walk you through, as a consultant, how to do well on there and how to succeed, more readily. I mean, when I tell people, to go, and I always use my line, when I tell people to go to these younger audiences, I always say, look, when you say, I want to control my own life, not yours, the next vein I always say is, and here's why. Because I'm excited about your potential. But I'm also excited about the potential of that guy over there and this girl over there. I don't want your potential to overrun theirs. I want everybody free to fly as high as they can. I'm excited about you. Okay, when you talk in that kind of language, Doesn't matter that I'm 51 years old. I sound 21. I sound like a human being. But if I come to them and start reeling off my legislation that I'm trying to move through on water rights in this canyon, do you see what I mean?
I don't think. See, that's the thing, is that I don't think that you're going to get that. I think that by asking to be a participant in somebody's YouTube channel and in content that they're making, I think that implicitly you are agreeing to playing along to with what they're doing. And I think that there's going to be some back and forth. I think there's going to be some talk there. With Obama, there's this built-in he's the president factor. And that impacts this a lot. The bully pulpit sort of thing. Fishy?
Yeah, no, I agree with what Andy's saying in this way. If we go in our arguments, whether it's on a presidential candidate on YouTube or it's one-on-one, if we start in our arguments with the charts and the graphs and the stats and the things like that, we're already behind because we're not selling, we're lecturing. And we talked last week about the importance of selling, and this is what the president is doing. He might not be selling his ideas. He is certainly selling his credibility to a group of people, and that is equally important, if not more important, than the ideas that come with that. The president doesn't need to get people to understand the intricacies of whether or not to approve Keystone. The president needs, in this appearance, what the president needs to achieve is people's admiration, trust, likability, that sort of thing. That's what he's going for. We have a deficit of attention on those elements on our side, and that is why I think getting into the other ideas, other than just selling your message, being a person, showing that you're relatable. You know what worked really well after the 2012 election, I think this happened the year after, is slow jam the news with Romney. That went over really well culturally for Romney, and people thought, well, he's not such a stiff shirt, or a stuffed shirt or a stiff neck guy. He could be funny. He could be self-deprecating and funny. People didn't know that about him, and he took that opportunity to do that. Now, that's about a year and a half too late, apparently, but our candidates need to be in practice with those things now.
Well, here's the thing, in my opinion, I totally agree. Okay, here's the thing, in my opinion. We have a huge advantage because everything the president's talking about, he's becoming less and less marketable because everything he just talked about tonight already came up on the ballot in November by his own design. He said, all my policies are on the ballot, and they got crushed. So when you have the president on, be it on YouTube or anything else, you're having a guy on whose none of his plans are ever going to happen anymore going forward. He's done. Well, for the most part. But the Republicans have this exciting young bench that's going to compete for the presidential nomination, any of whom could win. And one of them, their ideas very well might be implemented into law. And so if once again, if you guys were to design like a half-hour thing that just took away the fear factor and gave them an idea, here's what you'll face, here's the advantage of it, here's the fun of it, and here's a great way to approach it. Couldn't that be really helpful? I mean, wouldn't that, take away the fear and get them in there?
I would love to do that. The one thing I would say too is shame on all those conservative consultants who actually get paid to do that stuff for not doing it.
Hold up there, Fishy. Hold up. Remember who we're talking about here. Republicans are people too. We don't want them on YouTube. We don't want the consultants on YouTube.
I think you're right. I think I take it back.
Yeah, thank you.
No, wait. That brings up something though that I was going to have Leslie intro, but if she's on, she could jump in here. There was an article about how does the GOP fight a populist tax the rich proposal, which is probably something that did come up at the State of the Union. People who listened can verify that for me. But it was by Jazz Shaw, and it was at Hot Air, and one of the interesting quotes that I found, and people need to take this in, I'm putting all kinds of markers around it. Absorb this, go think about it, and then go think about it some more. He says, let's get one thing out of the way up front. This dog and pony show, and he's talking about the giveaway culture, the sweepstakes, presidency, the college, free college, and things like that, and the reducing or raising taxes on the rich, those things. This dog and pony show has zero to do with policy and everything to do with politics. Obama already knows not one of these proposals will ever make it within smelling distance of the floor for a vote in either chamber. What's being done here is essentially a handoff of the baton to Hillary Clinton and all the Democrat hopefuls with an eye towards the next election. This doesn't make it a stupid idea for the president. He doesn't need to jack up the tax rates to be successful. He just needs to make the Republicans refuse to jack up the tax rates. Soak that up. He doesn't need to jack the tax rates up to be successful. He just needs to make the Republicans refuse to jack up the tax rates. Do you see how much harder our hill is to climb, message-wise especially?
But I thought what was really great was that there was actually kind of an answer in the article. And that's that our argument is not we don't want to jack up the tax rates. Our argument is that we need to return to an aspirational type of society rather than a jealous society. And he did explain that when times are hard, it's a lot easier to be jealous of the guys who are doing well. That's it's kind of a human nature default way to be, is that when you're not doing so well and there's a lot of pressure on you, what makes you feel good is to express jealousy and anger at those who are doing well. And Obama and the left is tapping into that, and they're very successful at it. And they're because we see more and more every year this huge growth. Yes, this huge growth in people who just hate the rich people, tax the rich. Well, why do we tend to think back longingly towards the days of Reagan? It's our mythological version of Reagan, the Camelot version of Reagan that we have, and it's because the way we remember that he made us feel about ourselves. I don't know if he did make us feel that way about ourselves, but it's the way we think he made us feel about ourselves, and that's that the future was bright and that we could succeed and achieve and do more and be more and get more and be richer, and we were willing to aspire to the American dream, and it was easier for us to, I'm going to love the rich people because I want to be one. And we had this aspirational energy, and you need to have a guy who inspires you. So you need to have a charismatic leader to kind of trigger that conversation. But then once you can get to a critical mass, then it starts to feed on itself, and you end up with, Alex P. Keaton, who is the aspirational high school student. But that's the way to look at the rich versus poor divide, and we need to turn it around, and instead of letting it be the anger at the rich people, turn it around and have it be aspire to be a rich person. And Republican policies, we reduce taxes across the board so that the middle class can become the rich, and so that the poor can become the middle class. We want everybody to move up a step. And that means that some of these decisions that we have to make, it's going to make the rich richer, but more importantly, it's going to make 5 rich people richer, and it's going to make 100 poor people richer, and it's going to make 1,000 in the middle class even richer.
Here's what I love about what you said, because when we're talking about these policies, if we can frame them and demonstrate them as putting roadblocks up for people who want to become rich. That they're trying to shut the door. The president's policies are trying to shut the door behind all the people who are already in that rich class. Instead of
Exactly.
allowing us to make more, they're trying to keep the rest of the people out of that universe, make it harder for them to get there when they get ahead, keep smashing them down. If we could try to cast it that way, that they're trying to close the gate to keep more people from doing better, I think that would work.
What are the magic phrases, Andy? Help us out.
The magic phrases for convincing people
for turning the anger at rich people around to make it being an aspirational, positive movement that we want from the middle to move up. That the Republican ideas of cutting taxes, it's not that we want the rich to get richer. Our proposals are not all about cutting taxes and saving money for the wealthy. Our proposals are about rejuvenating the nation as a whole and making us look forward, and this shining city on, not shining city on a hill, but whatever all the old phrases were in the 80s of optimism and future so bright I gotta wear shades, that stuff.
Well, I always lead with if I take more of what you have, won't you cling to what you have left? They say, well, yeah. I say, okay, do you believe that the rich are perfect people? They're all sinless creatures. Everyone's a cross between Jesus, Gandhi, Mother Teresa rolled into one. Well, no. Oh, okay, so they're self-seeking like us. So if we take more of what the rich have, won't they cling to what they have left? You see, when they cling to what they have left, they charge more, they promote less, they hire less, they create less. You don't want that. Whenever we take more from the wealthy, they are going to create far less of all the things that benefit us, which means jobs. Okay, redistributing wealth, taking from one to the other, that doesn't create anything. And to create jobs, you have to have the benefit. You have to have profit from creating. You're taking that away. You're saying, I want to force this wealth from here over here. And by the way, why do you want to control their money? I don't have a quick answer for you really quick. We all know the economic answers. What you're doing is stifling economic growth, but they're not going to listen to that. So I usually get into terms like control. If the rich gave all they had to the poor, would you still want to raise their taxes? Well, no, I wouldn't. Right. You wouldn't, because they're giving it all. So the reason you want to raise their taxes is to force them to give more. You want to control their charity. How would you like that done to you? Okay, I try to personalize it. And then I try to remind them, by the way, you're rich compared to 95% of the world. So
I'm glad you said that, because somebody actually posted that and tagged me on it about the 1% of the world thing. Right. And I'm definitely going to be using that in my response.
Yeah. Would you like, for the benefit of the world, would you like all the poor in America who are richer than most of the world, would you like the poor in America to have to give 5 times what they currently give to charity and have it given to nations that they don't get to choose? Because that's exactly what you're saying should be done to the people who are richer than you. Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Absolutely. And speaking of giving riches to people who might not, having misappropriation of funds, we'll say. I just want to, real quick before we go, I want to talk about something. It sort of ties in with the elitism, the anti-intellectualism, all that fun stuff. Ted Cruz got named to got named to head the the subcommittee on space, science, and competitiveness, where he will oversee NASA, and the left has just lost their mind over this. And I saw this on HuffPo. Ted Cruz, and here's the headline that they thought was correct to post. Ted Cruz, longtime foe of NASA and science, will oversee NASA and science in new Congress.
He's been the minority chairman of that committee for however many years.
Absolutely.
Now that the Republicans are in charge, he's the guy at the top. It's not like it was a decision.
It's mind blowing. But the thing is that it doesn't matter that it was appropriate that he become the head of the subcommittee.
No, this is the conventional wisdom that Republicans hate science.
Exactly, and to that point, I was very happy to see in Politico, Senator Rand Paul and Representative Lamar Smith actually penned not a response to that article, but a response to this meme that the GOP somehow is anti-science, entitled, novelly enough, "No, the GOP is not at war with science." Let me just put this in the chat there.
We don't fight wars that we would lose.
I'm sorry?
We don't fight wars that we would lose, and you'd have to lose a war with science. I mean, because facts and stuff.
Yeah, and as we've talked about before earlier in the show, we are not at all at war with science. We embrace science on a lot of different levels. It's ridiculous to say that we're at war with science. But what Rand and Lamar get to in the piece is they say, for example, it is Congress's constitutional responsibility to ask questions when the National Science Foundation decides to spend public funds on a climate change-themed musical. That's what qualifies. That's something that qualifies as science. $700,000 for that.
Wait, what? Climate change-themed what, though?
Musical. A climate change-themed musical. Ostensibly for... dollars. Yes, ostensibly to go to schools and do performances in auditoriums, that sort of thing.
Well, there's a song from Oklahoma called "It's Gonna Be Another Hot Day."
That's it.
I don't think that's one of the songs that they used. Or an investigation of Tea Party activity on social media, $919,000.
What?
$919,000.
Somebody's been reading my posts for $1 million.
Yes.
That poor bastard.
Or to study bicycle designs. Anyway, he goes through all this long list of stuff that is put under the head of science, of the National Science Foundation, but really these are scientific studies that we're deeming appropriate to send our taxpayer dollars to. And sure, this is less than 1% of the budget that we spend each year. But that doesn't mean that $9 million or that $1 million is just pocket change that we can spend willy-nilly on stupid things. We do have kind of a large amount of debt.
Well, and if you can't cut the small waste, how are you ever going to cut the large waste? I mean,
exactly.
You have to. But this is sort of the left saying cutting funding for NASA is because you hate science is the same as our side saying cutting funding for the military is because you hate the soldiers. Every department of the federal government can handle a budget cut.
I agree, and I think that it's duplicitous to say that that we can't cut some military spending. But I'm also more libertarian-ish on spending maybe than some. But what I want to bring to everybody's attention is not just this piece, which is a great one, and I think makes the case very well. I think that Rand and Lamar do a great job of saying, hey, we do think that there's a place for us to be spending money, and lots of money, on promoting science and on investigating things. There's a response, a rebuttal from Bob Seay, I think is his name, Seay, on Huffington Post again, and the title of this one is even better. It's even better than the war on science. Turning science into the new welfare queen. That is his response to the Rand Paul, Lamar Smith.
We hate science people because they're like poor welfare queens, and they're taking government money. So he's saying that we don't want to give government money to scientists, same as we don't want to give government money to poor people because we hate them all, or something.
In an article in Politico, Rand Paul attempts to create, and he doesn't mention Lamar Smith, he just says Rand Paul. I wonder why he's just singling out Rand Paul there.
Boogeyman.
attempts to create a mythology that he hopes will convince Americans to hate science. Paul knows that if he can get voters to resent scientific research as much as they resent minorities and poor people, then he and his fellow Republicans will be free to ignore inconvenient facts about climate change, population trends, and other data that goes against the Republican agenda. That's just a small sample of this. It gets even worse. There's so much in this that's absolutely bunk. And here's another thing. This was one of the more disturbing parts of this. On the concept that we talked about it, $1 million to investigate Tea Party internet usage. The thing about science is that you never know where these discoveries will lead. Research on the Tea Party's use of the internet, to use one of Rand Paul's examples of wasteful spending, could lead to a better understanding of how all groups use social media, including groups that might not be friendly to the United States or to American citizens.
Look, bottom line, they're talking about using the money on one side, not the other. It's biased, so I don't care. But when they say we're anti-scientific, the answer is very simple. Well, then you have nothing to fear. If we're anti-scientific, then you have no reason to claim consensus to silence us. Let's open up the discussion. Thank you. So from now on, you just have proclaimed that you no longer have to use the word consensus for your side, because you only have to use that to silence dissent. And if you think that we are so unscientific and so, helpless in that realm, then you have no reason to not hear us out. Oh, by the way, just so you know, when you do hear us out, we're going to cream you because we're far more scientific than you. And every single prediction you've made for the last 20, 30 years has not even remotely come true. And, that's kind of a problem for science.
You know what I find funny is this rigid and religious commitment to what science says that they try to push through this, and at the same time the economic theories on the left are so incredible and suspend so much reality. Could we call them economic deniers?
I think
we
so.
should.
I like that.
That's beautiful. Yes. I love that.
Economic deniers. I like that.
But even with all of when the left does their science-y stuff, they look at the proposals, the theories, the projections, and they don't look at the actual results. They don't do it in economics. They don't do it in any of their climate change stuff, because the actual results contradict their theory and their predictions. But they don't look at that, and it's the same with most leftist proposals. As long as you meant well, the results don't matter. It doesn't matter that all of the welfare state and the Great Society stuff has been a colossal failure. You meant well. It doesn't matter that spending 4 times more per student has resulted in absolutely no improved performance of their test scores. We need to spend more because we care. And if you don't spend federal government money on something, you're banning it effectively. I mean, there's this entire understanding of if you care, you spend federal money. If you care about science, you have to fund it federally. If you care about education, you have to fund it federally. And if you say no to federal funding, then that's the same as banning something because you're opposed to it.
Yes, that's actually a concept that, if I'm not mistaken, we got from the law. Bastiat actually identified that quite a long time ago. The same thing, saying that you are against the public treasury performing a function is not the same as saying you oppose the function. I think it's Bastiat.
He's broken Windows theory guy, right?
No.
I always tell young people, the only reason you have government fund something is because you believe people will not choose it on their own. You believe the market doesn't want something, therefore the government has to force it. Why is LeBron James rich? Because we together choose to make him that way because we love his product. He doesn't make a dime without us buying his product, watching his game. He works for us. We work for the government. If the government has something that has to be funded their way, They're only doing that because the free market will not do it. If the free market funded it, the government would not have to. So anything funded by the government is done for one reason: to control you, your choice, to take it away because they don't believe in what you would choose on your own.
To end the show on an elitism note, that's basically what it is. We know better than you, and we're going to spend your money the way that we see fit because we're smarter and you're dumb. And
we can lie about it, and we can give false statistics, and we can make up all sorts of data or things that we want to push our lie because it's more important than the truth if we're going to get what we want.
We're more than willing to pay exorbitant fees for studies that agree with us. All the time. All right, guys, that is pretty much it for the show. Thanks, everybody, for listening. In the chat room, we had a bunch of people. It was really great. We had some newcomers. So thanks to everybody over there. Thanks, Prue and Farmer Ted and Prairie Dog and T and Titan. And we had a new guy. We had Dean over there tonight. So that was really good to get everybody's comments in from the chat room. As always, you can catch the podcast on Thursday night over at Vigilant Liberty Radio. All of these links are on our webpage at therefineryshow.com. We have iTunes and Stitcher, TuneIn, all of these things. We have that, and we have every week we've got bunches and bunches of clips that go out on YouTube. And last week was our best week ever. We had just insane. I know we didn't give the monetary, we didn't give the financial report this week, but we cleared $2.50, everyone, in ad revenue on our videos, and that was thanks in no small part to getting a video 414 views. That's more than any other video, and it did it in like 3 days. That was our What Do You Say on free college. So that's a segment that we will be returning to, I'm sure, very soon. And man, it's awesome that we're getting out there and that people are watching us, and we so appreciate everybody who likes and shares and subscribes. We're up to 119 subscribers on YouTube, and it's been a blast. So again, thanks everybody for watching, and thanks to Andy and Corey from the Party of Choice, and to Ryan and Leslie. Sorry, Ryan, that your game went a little bit south, and sorry that you didn't get a chance really to speak. But I'm glad that Leslie was here to get that chance, and of course, me and Fishy from Free Radical Network. We all appreciate you guys for listening, and we will see you guys next week, Tuesday at 9:45 Eastern. Thanks, and have a great night.